Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is a Heel Heat Top 10. For this Top 10, we've went back in the vault a bit. We're revisiting a Top 10 I did a little over 3 years ago now, maybe about 3 years and about a month. And that was, at that point, the Top 10 Brightest Futures. Now you could go back and watch and see who I missed on, who we totally got right, who we totally got wrong. But I figured after 3 years it's time to update it and do a new version with new talent. And we're coming up. This will be a top 10 Brightest Futures Revisited. And to preface it, you're not going to see a lot of WWF guys on here. Most of the people that you're going to see are independent talent, so if you hear of someone on this list that you're not familiar of, feel free to jot their name down, and then when you're done watching this video, check them out. Go to YouTube, put their name in, see what you do. Some of these people you may like, some of them you may not. But I can almost guarantee that most of them will be the future of wrestling. Starting off at number 10, Caleb Conley. Here's a guy who's in Evolve, does some stuff in PWX out of North Carolina. He's been on Paragon Pro Wrestling as their world champion. He's done a little bit of everything, and he's got the look, he's got the talent, he's got the skill set. He just needs the break. He's done pretty much everything you can on the independent scene, short of becoming a Ring of Honor champion or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla champion, one of the bigger independents. However, it's his time. Someone needs to take recognition to him. The guy has it. He has an it factor, and he could be an amazing talent on TNA, on Ring of Honor, in the WWE. Someone just needs to give the guy the break that he needs, and he's ready for it. Now, our number 9 is a guy that over the last year and a half or so I've become more and more familiar with. He's a guy that I became first familiar with who was talked about on a friend of mine, or actually two friends of mine's podcast, live from the Armory wrestling show. He's been a guest on there and he's been talked about ad nauseum, and that is Joe Black. Here's a guy that, when I watch him, the comparison that I come up with is he reminds me of a wrestling Andre 3000. And if you're not familiar with who that is, that would be half of Outcast, the guy that most of the world is going to remember for the Hey Ya video, the singer of that. Kind of an eclectic, different kind of cat with a different kind of vibe. The kind of thing that's going to take him far, because he's damn well a very talented wrestler. He's different enough that he's going to stick out like a sore thumb anywhere you put him, in a good way. And like I said, I consider him the Andre 3000 of wrestling, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Next up, number 8. Our first appearance of a lady on this countdown, and that is Candice LeRae. We all know and love her as half of World's Cutest Tag Team with Joey Ryan, as well as her singles run. We've seen her do intergender matches. We've seen her go hardcore. We all have seen the infamous match with her and Joey versus the Young Bucks from Guerrilla Warfare last year. She has the look, she has the ring talent, she has the skill. She can get in there and match up with any guy in the world as well as any girl in the world. And much like I said with Caleb, it's a person that just needs that little bit of a break. And once she gets it, she's going to take the wrestling world by storm. Number 7. Zack Sabre Jr. Here's a guy that's kind of notching his way up to being one of the king of independent wrestling right now. He's a guy who does a lot of work in England, some in Japan, has wrestled over in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Basically out of the mold of a Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit type mold, a shooter more or less, for a lack of a better term for it. A very talented wrestler and ring technician that harkens back to the days of every move and every moment means something. If he twists your wrist, it's because later on in the match he's going to try and put a wrist hold on you. If he hits you in the back, it's because he wants to put a back break on you. If he goes after your knee, it's because he's going to put on a knee bar. The guy is ultra talented and ultra skilled. Like I said, he harkens back to a Dean Malenko, is the best comparison I can make with him. And I think it's just a matter of time before we see this guy busting through and really being a major star. Number 6, John Skylar, the man that's known as the Southern Savior, a guy who has torn up all of the Southeast United States independent wrestling companies. Here is a guy that has the it factor in spades. I mean, this guy, you could just look at him and see that he's a star. Then when he gets in the ring and backs up everything he says on the microphone with the skill and talent he puts into every match, he is a guy that's going to go far. And I'd be remiss to say I can easily see John Skylar being a guy that wins the TNA title, wins the WWE title, main events, Bound for Glory, WrestleMania, SummerSlam. He's got that much talent and that much upside still that he should be one of the guys that takes over the industry. Now, our number 5 is the first of our second generation wrestlers. We have a couple on here, and that is Tessa Blanchard, the daughter of the great Tully Blanchard, one of the great wrestlers of all time, granddaughter of Joe Blanchard, which technically makes her third generation wrestler. I know. But anyway, back to Tessa herself. Even with that amazing pedigree, we have this woman that comes into wrestling, and we start off with she's an absolutely beautiful, stunning woman when you just look at her. And then you take her and you bring her into the ring. And she's got the talent. She's got the skill. She's a female version of Tully Blanchard. And she also has some influence. I don't want to get too much into her life story, but you can see the influences from Magnum TA as well, who she's had in her life a lot, and that helps her. And you can see some of the mannerisms from him. To me, she's got the ring skill of Tully with the ability to connect with the crowd of Magnum TA. And a lot of it, and a lot of what greatness is coming out of her, and a couple of the other people on this list, is she's went through and been helped out a lot by George South, a guy that you've heard me mention before is one of the great trainers in the United States right now. Tessa Blanchard, I'm going to make a bold prediction right now, right here. There will be, within the next 5, maybe 10 years, a female women's wrestling match to main event WrestleMania. Tessa Blanchard will be one of those people. And I'll mention the other one that I believe is going to do it very soon. Now, our number 4 is another women's wrestler, a lady who's making her actually one of the very few that I put on here. There's only a couple that I put on here that are actually on the WWE roster right now. And the reason why her and the other one I'm going to get to later are on this list is because I don't believe that either one has reached their upside potential yet. The first one I want to mention is Sasha Banks, the boss of NXT, the boss on the show, kind of got a little bit lost in the shuffle in the Divas Revolution, However, she has the crowd behind her. She has the matches behind her. She has the skill level. She has the unique ability to connect with a crowd. Even when she's being pushed to the background, she's still being able to connect with a crowd where the crowd is chanting, "We want Sasha," during other people's matches. She's a great wrestler, one of the great women's wrestlers that is coming out. And dare I say, if you notice, my list is very heavy. It has a few women's wrestlers because I really believe that a lot of the women's wrestlers are doing what wrestling fans want to see more so than the male wrestlers right now. Women's wrestlers are taking it to where wrestling is an art form. Whereas we see too much in the men's side of it, a propensity to be overly flippy, overly needing to get their spots in. A lady like Sasha doesn't need to get her spots. She gets over, and she has her spots, obviously everybody does. But what I mean by that, she doesn't need to do a double moonsault to get over. She doesn't need to do a shooting star press. She doesn't need to do crazy maneuvers to make you want to watch her. Her personality and her ring presence makes you want to watch her. Now, our number 3. Anytime you call a guy Johnny Wrestling, you know that they're great. And that's Johnny Gargano. He's done a little bit of NXT work. We've seen him in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. We've seen him in Chikara. We've seen him all up and down the independent circuit. Here's a guy who I really, really think, if, much like I said with some of the other people on the list, if he's given the ball and given an opportunity, he will connect with a crowd and he will become a star in rapid fashion. He's already a star in the independent scene, one of the biggest independent wrestlers there is out there right now. And I really think he can transfer that onto a main level, mainstream role. I really think he's someone that could be a headline wrestler at WrestleManias, at SummerSlams. Like I've said, a lot of these people. Johnny Gargano has everything you would want in a prototypical wrestler. He is great in the ring. He's great on the microphone. He's a good-looking man. I mean, what more can you ask from the guy? Now, our number 2 is a guy, it's kind of, like I said earlier with Zack Sabre Jr., and a lot of the same things I said about him are about this guy, and that's Kyle O'Reilly. A guy who has really taken the independent wrestling scene and taken Ring of Honor by storm. We see a lot of them in Red Dragon, in New Japan Wrestling, and Ring of Honor Wrestling. However, he's really starting to break out as a solo wrestler and really starting to come into his own to where he's getting to the level of a Daniel Bryan when he was Bryan Danielson in Ring of Honor, or an Austin Aries. He's really raised his level of competition to where he's that good and he's that guy that you can count on, that's going to give you match after match, night after night. He's going to tear the house down. He's going to give you the match of the night. He's going to give you the promo of the night. And you're going to be thoroughly impressed with everything you see from him. Now, before we get into our number 1, we do a little thing here on our top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically, these were the people that were in conversation to make the top 10, but for whatever reason just didn't quite make the cut. In no particular order, first off, Ethan Case. Mostly known in the Carolinas, and a little bit, he's starting to stretch out a little bit his areas. I've seen him personally at a Ring of Honor show last year where him and his tag team partner at the time were used, but not really too much. They didn't get to show off their expertise. He's really coming into his own in the independent scene in the Carolinas right now, and he's barely started to scratch the surface. I see nothing but upside with him. In 3 years from now, when I do this list or try to update this again the next time, he might actually be the number 1, but he's starting to break out and he's really starting to get something and be something special. Next up, Trevor Lee. a guy who's recently been on TNA Wrestling, has done some stuff with Global Force Wrestling, has done stuff with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, Booker T's Reality of Wrestling. Just a great talent overall. One of the guys that I really think that TNA is going to be leaning on to build their X division at this time. And I know TNA isn't what it used to be and doesn't hold quite the caveat it used to even 5 years ago. However, it could be a springboard to bigger and better things for Trevor Lee. And I think he's a guy that he could carry that X division and become a star there, and then transfer even into their world title picture. And who knows where else he'll go from there. Next up, last but not least on the best of the rest, a second generation wrestler, Cody Hall. We've seen very, very little of him in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's a young boy with the Young Bucks, obviously, and the rest of the Bullet Club there. And we've seen very little of him. However, what we've seen some of the flashes of his father, Scott Hall. We've seen the inherent charisma. We've seen he has the size, the skill, the determination. If he could keep his head set on straight, and if he could stay away from the demons that troubled his father most of his career, we could actually see Cody Hall eclipse Scott Hall and become a world champion and become a main eventer at WrestleMania. The kid has that much potential and that much. There's a lot of things that you can't teach. Size, charisma, some of that's just part of who you are. And being the son of Scott Hall, obviously he has a lot of charisma that he's inherited from his father, who's one of the most charismatic wrestlers that's ever been. I just think he's a kid that has a lot of upside talent, and the more we're going to see of him, the more it's going to be realized. Now, before I go on to our number one, if you think I put somebody up too high, put somebody down too low, left someone off the list altogether, let me know what you think. Hit me up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put something down there in the comments. Let me know what you feel. Make sure you hit like and share on this video, get this out there to the world. And now we're going to roll into our number one. Our number one brightest future is Bayley. And much like I said with Sasha Banks, I didn't want to put too many WWE stars, or any at all actually, when I was doing this list. However, I made exceptions for these two because I don't think they're where they could be. I don't think that they've quite got to the point where they could be the person that I think they're going to be. And I mentioned earlier Tessa Blanchard that my bold prediction is Tessa Blanchard's going to main event WrestleMania. I believe that this is going to be her opponent, Bayley. And I honestly think that within the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see Bayley become the women's equivalent of John Cena in all the best ways possible. She's going to be the face of the company. She's going to be the one that the kids buy all her merchandise. She's going to be the ones that you see the signs for in the crowd. She's going to be the one doing the Late Show with Jimmy Fallon. She's going to be the one on the Today Show. She's going to be the one on ESPN. She's going to be the one doing the Susan B. Komen, doing the Make-A-Wish. Her character and the way it's portrayed is possibly one of the best babyface characters there's ever been. The positivity that she brings to the ring and the smiles that she puts on kids' faces, and not just kids, adults as well, it's going to transfer so well. I've seen her several times in NXT. I've seen her on their NXT specials, and I've seen her in little shows where 100 people are there. And I can tell you right now, she goes out of her way to make sure that every kid in that audience she says hello to, she signs an autograph, gives a hug to. She makes it special for them. And that connection is what's going to put Bayley at the top of the wrestling industry and become the first woman to main event WrestleMania. And I believe Tessa Blanchard's going to be her opponent as the ultimate foil to her. Obviously, in this scenario, Tessa's going to have to play heel. I understand that, and I think she'll be very good at the role. I think she has it in her. I just really think that Bayley is going to be the standard bearer. If you really look at it, and if you've seen my videos, I've championed this for quite a bit, that I believe women's wrestling can be more than it is, or it's being allowed to be. And the two examples I want to make, and one is a new example. We've seen how huge of a star that Ronda Rousey could be in mixed martial arts, and being the biggest star in that business, which is very similar to wrestling. Now we're seeing a movie that is breaking all kinds of box office records at the time this is being recorded, and most likely will be the highest grossing movie of all time, is Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, the reason why that's special is because if you look at it, the two main characters in the movie, it's a movie that's being carried by a black actor and a female actress. Historically, Hollywood has told us that neither one sells, but we're finding with this, with the Hunger Games, with other movies and other avenues, that old axiom is going by the wayside. Where someone like that, like a Ronda Rousey, can be a big star, like a Venus Williams could be a huge star now. We're starting to see where women in general are being able to be considered just as important and just as pivotal as their male counterparts in other parts of entertainment. Adele in the music industry, Taylor Swift. It's all over, everywhere. And if you look at it, like I said, Adele, Taylor Swift, Ronda Rousey, Daisy Ridley, Scarlett Johansson. You got some of the biggest stars in the world are women right now. And it's very refreshing. And I know it's weird coming from a white male hearing me champion women and hearing me champion the minorities, but I feel like if someone has talent, they shouldn't be held back because of either being a woman or being B, a minority. It's just how I feel. I think everybody should have an equal opportunity, and I really think that Bayley's going to be the first woman to main event WrestleMania. It's a lofty expectation, but it is what I expect of her. I think she is the person to do it, and I really think that the world is ready for it. But basically, that's all I have to say about this top 10. My name is George Coles, and this has been a top 10 Brightest Future Revisited, and another episode of Heel Heat.